All right. Hello, Titans. We're back with another installment of the Titan Table Talks. My name is Cecil Chik. I use she and they pronouns, and I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Diversity, Inclusion, Equity within the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, Equity Programs here at Cal State Fullerton. I will serve as the moderator for today's talk. This dialogue is brought to you by our office, DIEP, in partnership with the Office of the President, Alumni Engagement, and Government Relations. But before we get started on the conversation today, we have a few logistical details for the program that we want to make sure we pass on to you so you can engage in today's dialogue. First, I want to point out that this event is being broadcasted on the Zoom webinar, so your cameras and microphone will be off the entire time. If you would like to engage with our panelists or the team behind the scenes, please use the Q&A function located in the menu bar in the bottom of your screen. This event is also being recorded and will be uploaded to the DIEP YouTube channel with closed captioning available at the very end of our dialogue. You will also receive a feedback link to help us improve this program, as well as provide for ideas for future events. So with the housekeeping stuff out of the way, I want to thank you all for joining us. And today we'll be engaging with our panelists in a conversation on empowerment in the Latinx community. Before we get to that conversation and dialogue and introducing our panelists, it is my pleasure to introduce Cal State Fullerton's president, Fran Vergy, who is here to give opening remarks. President Vergy, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's great to be here, Cecil. Good morning, everyone. Happy Latinx Heritage Month and welcome to Titan Table Talks, our first one of the year, Empowering Nuestras Comunidades. The theme of this year's Titan Table Talk series will speak directly to the panelists' personal experiences with overcoming systemic barriers and their stories, their origin stories of perseverance. By speaking from a lens of empowerment, our campus community will learn what kind of barriers communities of color face and the progression from marginalization to inclusion and success. As an institution, we can move forward from a place of acknowledgement of these barriers to action only through allyship and solidarity. So I want to begin by thanking our moderator and leader of our diversity, inclusion, and equity programs. You just met her. Dr. Cecil Chik, an amazing leader at Cal State Fullerton, and also the team, the DIEP team at Cal State Fullerton. I also want to thank our offices of government relations and alumni relations for their partnership. And then there are amazing panelists. Sylvia Pizarroso, Vice President of the Emerging Middle Markets team for JP Morgan Chase in Orange County and the Inland Empire, the chair of the Orange County Hispanic Chamber, and now an honorary Titan. I love that. Fidel Gomez, my friend, Titan alum, government affairs and public policy manager at PepsiCo, who always catches me and says, make sure it's a Pepsi in your hand. It's so good to have you here, Fidel. Marklem Valdovinos, Senior Director of Community Impact at the American Heart Association and a Titan alumna who graduated in 2008. And last but not least, for sure, our 2006 alumnus, Adolfo Romero, Vice President of Events Programming at SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park. Man, talk about being in the hot seat. I want to thank you all for being here for the Titan Table Talks as we discuss, as I said, empowering Nuestras Comunidades. As many of you know, at Cal State Fullerton, we are doing just that. We are empowering our communities. When I arrived in the spring of 2018, I asked the question to many, what does it mean to be an HSI, an Hispanic serving institution? And I was immediately given the short answer, you need to have 25% Latinx students. I said, okay, I get that. But I asked the question again, what does it mean to be an Hispanic serving institution? How do we serve our Latinx students? How do we empower them, not only to reach their full potential, but to see the importance of empowering others to do exactly the same thing? And as I began to look into the programs and the support we offer, I quickly learned we are not just an HSI by accident or by default, not just by numbers. You know, we are #1 in California for graduating Latinx and underrepresented students. #3 in the nation for graduating students of color. number 7 in the nation for social mobility. And this past spring, more Latinx Titans earned their degree than in any other year in our history. And I am very proud of those facts. This kind of success, though, it doesn't come by accident. This success, it's only achieved by intentional design, by determined students and faculty and staff who are committed to serving our Latinx students, who, as you will hear, go on to serve and empower others as well. Now, of course, when I talk about our Latinx alums like this, or I cite our ranking as the number 3 university in the nation for graduating Latinx students, there's a tendency to think about our Latinx students through the lens of what they will do when they graduate, what our alums are doing now. But I want to make something clear. It is really important to remember that Latinx Titans do not wait for graduation to lead, empower, or make a difference across our state and across our nation. They are already doing it today while they are in school. Case in point is one of our students of whom I am most proud, Maria Linares. She attended Cal State Fullerton as an undergraduate, where she served on ASI as the ASI board chair, and she advocated for students. And then she graduated with her BA. But now she's attending CSUF as a grad student, pursuing her master's in public administration, and was appointed by Governor Newsom in 2020 as a student trustee for the CSU Board of Trustees. Now she does all these things while being the mother of 3 amazing kids at the same time. She is a fearless advocate and now speaks out to empower all CSU students. And I know one day she's going to go on to be governor. I'm going to be reporting to her. I am so proud of Maria and everything that she does. She is the epitome of the saying, "It takes a Titan." As I mentioned, we are intentional in our support of these students, as well as our work to ensure that our faculty, our staff, and our administrators, they reflect that diversity, that our students can see themselves in our community. But the system of oppression and privilege runs deep in this country. And I will be frank, it's in our university too. We are no exception. And we must continuously do more to root out that subterranean set of privilege, that systemic privilege, and create a more equitable and inclusive environment on our campus and in our community. One way we are doing that is through our 6 guiding principles for social justice, which our community at Cal State Fullerton have rallied around. This is a lens through which we look at every decision that we make. We ask ourselves, will it enhance equitable learning? Will it expand intentional outreach to the community? Will it amplify our HSI designation and radiate an identity of inclusion for our students, our faculty, our staff, our community? Will it build a professoriate to leadership pipeline for our faculty? Will it recognize history and catalyze change for the future? And will it help create an anti-racist community at Cal State Fullerton, in Orange County, in the state, and in our nation? Our goal is to ensure that these principles are not only embedded in all of our decision-making, but they also are reflected in the academic journey of all our Titans everywhere. And we are working hard at this, but there is still so much more to do. I said something yesterday to someone. I said, this is not a sprint. This is not a marathon. This is actually a relay race where we keep passing the baton to generations, and we continue to make this change, to bring this change to Cal State Fullerton, to the community, to our country, and to make this world a better place. A place where all Titans can see themselves in our educators. They can find themselves in our programs. They can recognize their culture in our curriculum, and they believe in themselves and the actualization of the hopes and dreams that they bring to us. That day comes only when our Latinx communities are no longer required to be more resilient than their peers. Together, we can get there. And this is one step along that way. And I am so honored to do this work with you, to share this journey, and to once again celebrate Latinx History Month with all of you. Thank you. And I'm so excited to hear what this panel has to say. Go Titans.
Thank you so much, President Virgie, for sharing space with us today and warming us up for a dialogue with another. And now I'd like to introduce our panel of guests who are excited and ready to talk about today's topic. First up, we have Sylvia Pizarroso. She is the vice president of the emerging middle market team for JP Morgan Chase in Orange County and in the Inland Empire. Born in La Paz, Bolivia, Sylvia immigrated to the US at the age of 15. She supports organizations that mentor young adults in the workforce readiness and has delivered educational seminars to the small business community for many years. Sylvia graduated from the University of Phoenix with a degree in business administration. Next, we have Fidel Gomez, who is a government affairs and public policy manager for PepsiCo. Fidel was also the founding board member and former vice president for the Orange County Youth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. He is passionate about empowering and working with emerging leaders and youth to create pathways to higher education, economic development, and social mobility. We also have Marklem Valdovinos that is joining us as the Senior Director of Community Impact with the American Heart Association. She also serves as a dedicated mentor and champion for greater diversity and inclusion as the AHA president for the Somos Corazon Latinx Employee Resource Group. Marklem also worked with Cal State Fullerton students on her Legacy Leader Internship Program. Last but not least, we have Adolfo Romero, who is the Vice President of Event Programming at SoFi Stadium in Hollywood Park. He previously served as a Senior Director of Events for the MLS League offices in New York. Adolfo's 15-plus year of career in sports also includes sales and marketing roles with Chivas USA and Los Angeles Angels here, where he interned after attending Cal State Fullerton. So will our panelists turn on their cameras so we can make sure we see you? Oh, there we are. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. I appreciate seeing so many alumni here today. Thank you so much. So today's conversation, we're really having this conversation of the theme about empowerment, right? So before we go through and have more conversations about that, I wanted to first and foremost learn a little bit more from your personal and professional experience. How would you define empowerment? What does that mean to you, and how has that impacted you in your personal and professional journeys? In no particular order, feel free to go, unless you want me to call on people, and I'm cool for that too.
I'm more than happy to start. Thank you so much. So yes, I am an alumni, graduated 2008. And when it comes to empowerment, I have to thank Cal State Fullerton. I was a non-traditional student at that time. I was a young mom, and Cal State Fullerton allowed me the opportunity to be engaged in multiple clubs. One of them was the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, which I was the PR president. And I said, how do I get this message across? And being a communications public relations students, I say, well, let me get involved with our PRSSA club out in Cal State Fullerton to help us get this message across that as a non-traditional student, as a mom, we have so many opportunities, and Cal State Fullerton gave us that opportunity to engage and to connect with other fellow classmates. So I think that's one of them that I can think of right away when it comes to Cal State Fullerton being a platform for us to really shine and also be ourselves.
I'm happy to go next. And thank you, first of all, for the invitation to join you guys today. And for me, I think very similar to Marklem, and when I was in school at Cal State Fullerton, it's really empowering the value that as a Latinx student that we brought to the community. And it wasn't just a percentage of the community, but it was really the overall and how we were integrating ourselves into the larger campus community. I was involved with Latino Business Student Association and with the American Marketing Association. And really through that experience, I think I was able to create my voice, of what I thought I wanted to do and what I felt empowered to do. And the community that was around me was really empowering and letting me know that I could do that and that I could go out and go after all these different dreams and aspirations. And now, as I look at it, 15 plus years later, I'm trying to do the same thing for others as we go out into the community. And as I'm now having a much younger staff in my team and really working in sports, bringing people into the sports community that look like me and they're representative of the community that we serve.
I can go next. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. To me, empowerment is your aha moment when you find your voice. Throughout my life, I'm a little older than all of you. I found myself having that moment, that aha moment, seems like every decade. First time around, and when I was a young individual, probably around 18, 19, going to community college and working many jobs. And one of the jobs I had a manager who saw something in me that I didn't see it in myself. So that was my first mentor. He empowered me to see something in myself that I did not see it, and show me the possibilities, kind of show me a path. Sylvia, you can do this. That was my first interaction with empowerment. It wasn't by me. Somebody had to show me the way, the light. And I feel that that's one of the reasons why I get involved with the community, working with young adults, is because I want to be able to pay it forward, give back, and show them a path that sometimes they may not see it themselves, because it's, given our background, sometimes we don't know the resources or possibilities that are out there for us. So it is my mission to show upcoming professionals, individuals, that path. Again, as I go through the decades, I've had aha moments many times over, but I think that was a very powerful one for me, that somebody else empowered me. It wasn't even myself.
Well, hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much. Very humbling and honored to join, of course, an amazing panelists here, colleagues, and of course, also other community leaders. First and foremost, I think for me, empowerment, a couple of key words for me is representation, enabling, supporting, a push-pull effect. And what I mean by that is that, throughout my experience at Casa Fullerton, I was actually very, very impressed and very happy to once, I was going through the whole community college experience, and finally I found a home where I found other similar faces, similar experiences and backgrounds. But not only that, I found a institution that has and had at the time very close, tight-knit connection with community, which to my benefit, I was able to make that connection with one of, a very important partner for the university, the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And through that, not only I was able to meet other leaders that have paved the way for a lot of us in different industries, in different areas, but I was also very much taken as a mentee to learn the ways, the good and the bad, so that I could become the leader that I am today for our communities. And I mentioned push and pull because it takes many of us and it takes different stakeholders. And that's what Casa Fullerton has been able to enable in myself and other folks out there in the community. So very, very much appreciative of all that support system, network, and also the ways that it continues to evolve and develop to target what the current needs are, not from the past, but rather what's actually now and into the future.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate hearing those definitions, right? Because there was a different lens and different framework to all of them, but I was able to, I'm jotting down some notes, so excuse me, I'm like, looks like I'm like fiercely writing down here, but there were some things that I found in common in all of your stories, right? You had talked about different ways and pathways to find your voice, right? You talked about the importance of mentorship, of other folks telling you of what you're capable of, right? Telling you like, oh, you can do more, right? Your potential is higher than what you originally thought. And this idea of representation. So along those lines, I wanted to kind of get your personal experiences maybe with would you say are some significant barriers that you encountered throughout your personal and professional life in kind of defining that empowerment for yourself, right? Where were some barriers that you encountered in your professional life?
I can start. There were many, but at the end of the day, I feel that I won the race. For example, as a woman of color, becoming an adult in the late 80s, things were a little different back then. There were definitely not people in my role that looked like me. It was predominantly a white male type of environment. And so I had to deal with not only the fact that I was a woman, but a woman of color, an immigrant who was still learning English. So lots of barriers there, but never gave up. Always knew that I could do more and be more. And as I went through the process of becoming the person that I am today, I've always thought that there are people that have it worse than me, so because coming from a third world country, even though I lived in the city and all that, I've seen a lot of poverty and seen how other people have it worse than you. So being given the opportunity to be here and the opportunities that were given to me, if I did not take advantage of them, I felt that they were going to win. So I did not allow them to win eventually. So I knew that I was going to make it. I knew I was going to work really hard to make where I am today. So I did not allow other people to essentially give me those barriers and not get to where I am today. So to this day, when I encounter some barriers, I try to ignore them. If I'm talking to people that are not being very real with me, if I know, depending on how well I know them, I try to have a conversation with them, but sometimes it's just not worth it. So I just move on, and that's the best way to deal with people when they're providing you, when they're giving you barriers.
So I loved what you said, because what I heard you say, because it bears reiterating, like one more time for the people in the back, right? So what I loved about what you shared is you found the overcoming of barriers through self-empowerment, right? And how you were telling yourself, I am not going to let them win. I know I am capable of that, right? So all those experiences that you had of telling you, right, you could be more, you started to pick up those messages and start telling yourself that as you navigated, right, a corporate world that wasn't very representative of your identities. So thank you so much for sharing those stories. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
If I could add something really quickly that I forgot to mention is one of the things that I love about the place where we are today as a community, as a nation, in the world, is that, we're becoming a little more inclusive. I think everybody's waking up and saying, we need to be a little more inclusive. And I love that about the present time, because in the past, being in the corporate world, they basically took away your identity. You needed to behave a certain way. You needed to integrate in a certain way, behave a certain way. So you couldn't bring your true self to work. Things are changing, and I'm very happy about that. People actually want to know about your culture. They want to know about you, and that you bring a different perspective that could be something that could help the business. So I'm very glad that we find ourselves in this place and time now.
Thank you, Sylvia. I think Fidel, you had something to add, and then I think Adolfo did too.
Yeah, I wanted just to echo because that was sort of kind of the self-empowerment as barriers. Personally, I encounter many, but just like many of us, self-empowerment was a key aspect, and if I may add, resiliency. I actually grew up in Mexico City up until age 14 and left my entire family. So it was just me here in the US, California. And, not only systematic barriers, cultural, language. I mean, I literally had no ties, connections to this country whatsoever. The only thing I had in mind was goals, aspirations, and dreams. And at the end of the day, when we talked about the different barriers that many face throughout day in, day out, throughout our careers, lives, personally and professionally, there are some of those defining moments that, keep us grounded and empowered us to move forward regardless of what we may be facing. And I could tell you that, at least for me, that was not only a way for me to empower myself, but to also go out and discover this whole world, right? Of first of all, learn the language. Second of all, in a way, integrate myself within the cultural context. And as a first generation immigrant, and also going through all these different, whether it's, do I continue? Do I have any opportunities to continue my education? Do I start working? Is there someone there that could guide me? I remember vividly, actually, having to take SATs, ACTs, but really having no direction. And I'm like, okay, well, do I really need that to go to college? And ultimately, I failed to take SATs and I took ACTs. So that kind of defined my pathway towards some of the selections through my education. However, that wasn't what defined me. I still went out there, graduated from a community college, transferred out to what I knew was the best public university in the region and in the West, Cal State Fullerton. And eventually I got my degree in international business, but I share that there are so many obstacles and barriers that sometimes get thrown our way. But certainly the self-empowerment, resilience are key aspects, that not only define our moments, but continue to push us and give us that breather. And sometimes that allows us to dream a little bit so we could go a little bit further. Of course, I heard Sylvia's also comments around, how nowadays I'm in the corporate world myself, and I'm very, very happy that I am able to work for a company that thrives and also aspires to become a champion within diversity. I now have colleagues from all over the world, different backgrounds, different beliefs, and we all are better because we do certainly come together as one. And certainly is not only something where I'm proud of myself, my background, and I'm able to share that with my colleagues and bring that to the table to support our business and bring value.
Thank you so much, Fidel. I think, Adolfo, you had something to add, you went earlier?
Yeah, I think for me, the story of this idea, especially in our Latinx community, of the immigrant culture and what we bring to the table, and kind of being more passive and being more, we don't want to talk too much about ourselves. We don't want to talk about our successes because we come from a community that was pretty humbled. And that was how we all grew up. And, and in talking to some of the leaders today, and I'm very involved with Latinx in Sports, which is an organization that I'm on the board for. And it got started by two 22-year-old, females that are really leading that community. And they took it upon themselves. To what Sylvia said, the community is very different now, right? Where 15 years ago, when I started in sports, I didn't find any other Latinos in sports. There might have been a few, and if there was any, it was back of house. It was, your traditional jobs that you would think it's housekeeping, it's in the kitchens, and it's not front of house. But I kept seeing people in the front office that were not necessarily look like me. But if you look at the fan bases of all these professional teams and both, being in sports and entertainment, all the fans were buying who was buying tickets. It's the Latinos. So, to me, there was no representation. Some of the kind you had all this community that was hiding, buying tickets, coming to the events, but not really having a voice. So that's really what inspired me to want to work in sports. When I started seeing that when I was still in school, I was very involved with the American Marketing Association, like I mentioned earlier, the LBSA, and one of the students was a graphic design intern with the Angels. And I approached her. I said, well, what does that look like? And she's also Latina. And she's like, well, they just tell me what to do, but they really don't allow me to tell the story of what our community want to do. So I found that I was like, well, I would love to go. So I took it upon myself. This is before any of social media. I sent a letter to the Angels. I would love to be an intern. and get considered for an internship there. This is the value that I bring. I see, I did my research on who, and I'm a huge baseball fan. I said, this is a community that's around you. And I think you need a voice within the front office for what you, and again, for me, it was about creating that voice and that value and not be ashamed of what our community was able to bring at that time. And of course it was difficult. And at times you were walking into a room when you're the only one. It's, it's a lot of bearing your shoulders. And when I did that and I was able to get an interview and then show them a little bit about our community. And to me, it was conversations that I was having with my parents, my friends. So there was no different. It wasn't a difficult conversation to then bring that to the boardroom and say, this is what you guys need to do in terms of promotions, outreach. So through that space, I learned that whatever we do as a Latinx community, really it's about telling our story that's different and really creating opportunities for others. And again, it's oftentimes going to be, you're going to be the first one. And nowadays, I'm no longer the first one. And I bring it back to this group that I'm involved with Latinx in sports, where it got started during the pandemic. And it really started through Twitter and doing Zoom meetings. And I thought, okay, there's maybe 40 of us nationally. It's actually now over 500, 600 people that are part of the community and growing. And it's across the board. It's lawyers, it's marketing, it's accounting, it's finance. So that shows you that's no longer the players on the field are Latino, or no longer is it just back of house, but it's really front of house, and it's the way it's changing. And it's because I think teams in general and sports in general, or in the entertainment side, we're realizing what's happening with the demographic. I mean, this weekend, to me and my role that I do for SoFi Stadium, I get to book all the events that happen within the stadium and all the concerts, all the sporting events. And to me, the best way to tell our story was to really empower our communities by booking the events that represent our community. So as an example, we did our first event in the stadium at full capacity was a Mexican regional band named Los Bukis, which if the community, whoever, for those of you guys that know that, for me, and I had to convince people internally of why Los Bukis was the one that we needed to book. But I knew that the community would embrace us, right? As like, oh, these guys know what they're doing. There's a voice within the booking team. And I go around the country and I look at all the people that book stadiums, and they don't look like me. So they wouldn't understand who Los Bukis is. So this is the value that we bring. This weekend we have Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny, we have 2 nights of Bad Bunny, and he probably is the one artist that has crossed over, and really defined, Latinx in a lot of different ways. And I think for us, this is a great showcase again of our community, but we can also still have Rolling Stones, and I can have the same conversations, right? So it doesn't, just because I'm Latino, doesn't mean I'm going to have to just book Latino acts. I can also have a conversation with some of these other acts or sporting events. And I think that's really important. And I go back to that piece of really delivering on the value. Don't be ashamed of what you bring to the table. And I think to me, that's the empowerment that we can bring to all of our people in our community.
I want to add to before, I think this is so important. This is such a great conversation, and I have to second what our mis amigos have said here today, because just like Adolfo, I also started as an intern for the American Heart Association, and I completely understand the value of internships. When I was in Cal State Fullerton, we had a guest speaker coming into our public relations 101 class. I had no clue what public relations was at that moment, but we had a speaker come in, talk about nonprofits. And I think I'm the only one here speaking on the nonprofit side, which is so wonderful to work for a nonprofit that really cares about community. And that has been always my heart. My heart is working with our community, our Latinx community. But another thing that I've heard within the conversation is that mentors, but also please look for mentors that move to be your sponsors, because your sponsors will fight for you, will always share your name in a room full of opportunities. And this is something that happened to me recently, where I had applied to a job within the American Heart Association that was literally spelled out for me. And this job was, of course, to lead the internship program, which is so close to my heart. I started the Legacy Leader program working with hundreds of students in Cal State Fullerton and engaging them in community health within our Orange County, Coachella Valley, Santa Barbara, all of those regions that I had the honor of serving our community. So I said, I got this job. It's written for me. I've done this before. Unfortunately, I was not the chosen one. So this is a challenge that broke me, but I did have that representative who told me, Marklem, you have been doing amazing with the American Heart Association with the interns. What else can we do for you? So as of July, I became the president for our employee resource group, which are so important within all the communities. You can be that trailblazer. If you don't have an ERG, which is the lingo, employee resource group, please do advocate one for your organization. I am proud to be the president of what used to be our Latinx ERG. We changed it this year to Somos Corazón to be more inclusive so that our allies within our organization can also join. They're like, I want to be Somos Corazón. So they have been joining us to learn more about. In fact, we just finished up our call within our Somos Corazón ERG. And I was so fortunate to have my VP say, I step up, go ahead, represent us within Cal State Fullerton because we know how much you love it. But you have the opportunity to be that trailblazer and always speak up. And with that empowerment that I received by being the president of this ERG, we were able to advocate for, I love students and I love internships. I always tell my students and my interns, internships are your golden ticket. You get the opportunity to learn about the communities you want to serve, where you want to serve. But with this leadership, this voice that we were given with the ERG, we were able to advocate so that all interns now entering the American Heart Association, remember, we are a nonprofit, are paid. I was a non-paid student, but this is part of health equity. We understand, me as a non-traditional mom going to school, working full-time, I was working graveyard hours in order for me to bring in that bread to our home because I had to go to school full-time and raise my family. So we understand the challenges that our students, our Latinx students go through, because we do say that internships are important and they are part of their growth and professional growth, but sometimes we just can't, right? We have to find that funding. So I'm so honored to say, yes, all of our interns now within the American Heart Association will be paid. So you are that voice, speak up. And if you don't have an ERG, find out about it and say, I want to start an ERG so that I can have a voice. I have the privilege of being in calls with our CEO. That is so amazing. I freak out all the time. I said, I am in this call with Nancy Brown, who is the CEO of the American Heart Association, and she listens to me. So I bring all of our concerns and everything that we want to share internally as employees and say, this is what's important to us. And just recently, we have just received that voice that we spoke up, and we will be getting tuition reimbursement too for college. So that is amazing. And you have a voice. Don't be afraid to speak up because somos importantes and we matter.
I'm already feeling empowered, y'all. So I think, right, on that topic, so we've talked a lot of like self-empowerment, right? That journey of making that transition of not knowing what you're capable of, and then being the person to be your own mentor and being your own sponsor, being your own cheerleader, right? There's that transitional pivotal point. It sounds like all four of you had. So I'm kind of curious about that journey, right? As you went through that moment of not knowing and like knowing only what you knew right at the time to now being able to, oh, I'm on calls with CEOs. I'm booking acts that are representative of my community, right? I'm sitting in a seat that I've never sat in before, and I am the one encouraging myself. So what was that journey like? How did you overcome moments where you felt disempowered? Right? How did you make that pivot? How did you pick up those skills? Right, to see yourself in those positions that maybe like Adolfo said, you were the first.
I can start. So back in the early 2000s, The company I was working for, the bank, had their sales organization that was 100% male. And I raised my hand to go out in sales. And that was not something that was done ever before. So I became the first female sales representative for the firm, for the bank. They were a little concerned at first because the clients we were serving were contractors and trucking companies. So they were, they were very concerned. It took me 18 months of campaigning to be able to obtain that promotion. I had to actually threaten that I was going to quit because I felt that I was prepared. By being the first one, they were scared. I was scared, but I wasn't going to let them know. So what happened is that I eventually got the job, and the person I was replacing was getting promoted to another position. So he was supposed to go and train me and introduce me to key accounts. It turns out the first week I started, he resigned and he went to work for the competition. So I was freaking out because now what do I do? He was supposed to introduce me to all these clients. So the president of the company calls me in and tells me that that person resigned and he will no longer be able to go and introduce you to key accounts. How are you feeling? And I think I had an instinct of empowerment at the moment. I said, I'm not afraid. I can take him on. Don't worry, I can do this. I got this. And he's like, good. That's what I wanted to hear. So I left his office and I said, oh, holy crap. What am I going to do now? But next day, I just downloaded or printed the list of accounts, and I just went out there and I start calling on those names. That was a pivotal moment for me because I was the first one. Once again, the failure was not an option. So I had to do it. And being the first one sometimes is scary, but at the same time, once you succeed, that success just feels so much better because, you essentially proved everybody wrong. And you even proved yourself wrong because, I had my moments of self-doubt. So I think, being a trailblazer is, I think, important because you will show people that what you're capable of, and then you will also show yourself what you can do. Sometimes you don't even know you can do certain things.
I can also share, that was beautiful what Sylvia said. I had at this moment, we won't say imposter syndrome because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. We can definitely empower ourselves, but sometimes we just need that little push. When I first moved to Orange County, because I covered the LA market, and my heart had always been to work with the Latino community. So I moved to Orange County. And the first thing I said is there's no Latinos in Orange County. I only knew Cal State Fullerton, but since being in LA, it seems like we're both planets away, but it's not. So when I first moved to Orange County to do community work in our Latino community, I didn't have anyone to connect with. And so I remember sitting on that desk and I found one little card. It was one business card that the previous director had left. And I said, there it goes. I'm calling this person and I'm making this person my madrina. She was a female, and a madrina is a godmother. I said, I'm going to connect with her and I'm going to see how she can make those point of contacts within the community. I was just myself. I said, I am new. I don't know anyone. I need to work in our community and I have no clue where to start. This madrina of mine, I call her my madrina still within Orange County. She put me in contact with everyone she had in her back in the day, she had the little calendar things with the business cards. So don't be afraid to find your madrina or your padrino. If you don't know who to reach out to, there's always someone out there who can help you. You just have to be yourself. So we have challenges, but the challenges only become challenges if we consider them challenges. Sometimes we always have to see them as opportunities because we need to find that person too. So I found my madrina who made me super successful within Orange County and connecting our community. So that's just something that I wanted to share. Don't be afraid to look for your madrina or your padrino.
I would second that as well. And I think as we think about some of our experiences, when I was in school, part of the challenge, growing up in Orange County, is there was people that looked like me in Orange County, and I grew up in this community where there was peers. So as part of going to what I was doing with LBSA, then I got involved with HACU, which is a Hispanic College Association nationally. They sent us to these conferences, and you would go and see different aspects of the country and really understand there's different Latinos, where in Orange County, there's a lot of Mexicans. Like my background is Mexican, and really understanding that there was differences, but there was a lot of similarities. And also figuring out how, as a Latino, you can walk into a room that's not full of Latinos, and how are you gonna act? How are you gonna, again, bringing that value that I talked about, and almost feeling very uncomfortable in a way. And I think that's what really impacted me and pushed me through a lot of these barriers, because we had to do a lot of that. And it started in school, right? Going to these conferences and representing Cal State Fullerton, it was a group of maybe 10, 15 of us, and really representation. And a lot of them happened to be Latinos, but then we were walking into a room that didn't have Latinos. So then I took that perspective. And when I started going into the sports industry, I was lucky enough that I worked for the Angels, and then went to work for Chivas USA. And at that point, I was selling a Mexican product in the US. And now I found myself selling to my community, and the community didn't really understand. It was kind of what we were selling, right? So then I really had to learn that piece where, again, I have been taught like we need to assimilate and integrate ourselves into this American culture. And now I was trying to understand the Mexican culture, and that existed, that I didn't even realize was at home day to day, right? And I had not taken the time to understand it, because I was so in tune to, you need to learn how to integrate yourself into the community that we're in now. But that was a great moment in my career, because I was now able to understand and really value my family a little bit better, because I understood the perspective, the struggle, because I was trying to sell to people, and the stories were, I wasn't selling to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. It was mom and pop restaurants. It was realtors. It was people that I was trying to convince them to buy season tickets. But the learning experience I had in those 2 years, because I talked to so many people and different stories, impacts me today, right? 15 years later, that I don't take that for granted. And I think sometimes you're not just going to be talking to the CEO and learning from that CEO, because oftentimes, he's so removed from the reality of what's going on. To me, what I learned in those 2 years of me going out and really doing corporate sales was understanding the struggle, the story, but also the commonality that we have within the communities. And to me, that was really important. And then as now I look forward to 15 plus years, when I walk into a room now, and I mentioned this, I may only be the only Latino again, but now it's on us to bring others. And now I make sure that I tell the story. I tell those stories so that, again, look, this is what makes us unique, what makes us different. But also I think there's a lot of things in common that we can all work on together. And I think that's how we can overcome this sense of empowerment. And hopefully, again, it's about representation, but it's also about giving examples to people that may or may not know. Like, there's a lot of people that I talk to now that don't even know that there's careers in sports and entertainment, outside of being on the field or being on the stage. And I think that's really important for us to represent. And I made that sort of in the last 2 years. I'm in a really great spot in my career where I can now start to give back and really tell that story. And I've spent some time thinking about what I wanted to do in terms of my next steps. And again, Latinx in sports is a community that was started by 22-year-olds that if you were to talk to them, they don't see color, right? They really see a community that's growing, that it looks very different than the community that probably we all grew up in. And it's no longer, the Spanish at the time, like, was look up, if you speak Spanish, people will look at you a little bit different. Now it's like, it's very fluid, right? You speak Spanish and you speak English and Spanglish, and it's almost like it's okay in mainstream America that that's happening. And I think that's just seeing that over the last 15 to 18 years, kind of what I've seen happen. It's been very interesting. But I go back to those 2 years from my career were so impactful. The Angels internship was great, and but those 2 years that I worked at Chivas and really understanding the community and the struggle was so impactful for me.
Well, amazing things the panel already shared here. But if I could add my 2 cents, the first things that I would say is, first of all, the whole empowerment and sometimes the disappointments that go through it, and how do you get back in the right track. I'd say being open to being understanding. There's a continuous learning process, and also the fact that not to be afraid to fail and uncomfortable. I think the way I've experienced this process, at least on my personal end, is a 2-front. The first stage of my empowerment process was self. So I had to go out there and learn and understand how the ecosystem worked. I had to go and build my own connections. I had to understand that even my classmate in whatever classroom was a connection, potential friend, potential introduction to a future opportunity. And once I understood that, I really took that to heart. And to, when I had the experience to connect with the Orange County Hispanic Chamber as an intern as well. And, after I spent some time there, we were able to not only understand a bigger purpose there with the Orange County Youth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that till this day, it still empowers the next generation of leaders throughout Orange County, and I dare to say Southern California. So certainly, once I understood that it all starts with yourself, it all starts with you trying to do what you can to learn and not to be afraid, and to be open to learn and continue to learn. And also, again, there's going to be those times where you are not going to have the answers, but it's okay to say, hey, I don't know the answer, but let me find out for you. And I'm going to make sure that we're going to take care of that for you the next time around. So once I understood that, the next process was actually, now I have all these giants, I call them, because I do stand on the shoulders of giants now, where not only they have taken me as a mentee to learn how they have seen the communities through now 50, 40 years that they have been around, some icons in the community. Dr. David Lizarra with Teleco Education Foundation, Ambassador Gary Vasquez in Orange County. These are some amazing and impressive individuals that have not only opened doors, but also access to a lot of us that now are there, and we're trying to create our own marks. And kind of going back to the previous question, in my particular role, I get to also now engage and be close with some of these policymakers, the top decision makers that are impacting our everyday lives, from local to state, and I dare say national and even worldwide, because a lot of our policies that are being created here in California essentially trickle down throughout the US and even the world. So it definitely is, for me, it has been important to understand that, hey, if I don't know it, if I know that I'm going to be uncomfortable, that's okay. It's okay. And to Adolfo's point, walking inside a room where familiar faces, it's very easy to continue to fall back and go to those places over and over. The challenge here is that go and walk into places where literally nobody looks like you, and literally you don't know anybody. And that's where it all starts, being comfortable with that and understanding that it's going to be a small time, but eventually you'll get to know and understand who those people are and how they come into the equation for your either professional or personal advancement. But certainly, I definitely think there's a lot of impressive leaders out there in the community that I'm very thankful, and I know a lot of people are as well, because they have opened doors, and I say doors, and it could probably be a hole, right? Because they have very limited spaces, and the way the system worked back then, it was a lot different than how it works now.
So, all right, I asked the question of how did you overcome barriers? And I jotted down like life lessons that I just got from y'all's responses. And I wanted to go ahead and review those with you all, right? So what I heard you all say is recognizing your limits, right? Knowing where you are, knowing where you stand, and then ask for help, lean into your community, right? Find that madrina, find that padrino, right? How do you lean into your community to ask for help? And then I heard, I think all four of you say, if you're scared, do it anyway, right? How do you step up and overcome that moment of fear and find that 3 seconds of courage and do it anyway, right? I heard you all talk about knowing your own worth, knowing your own value. What do you bring? And being a good champion of that in different spaces to showcase what your worth and what your value is from your very different identities and experiences. What you do, what can you do to enhance, right? The organization that you work for, the nonprofit, be it for-profit, whatever group you're in. And then I think what I liked the most was how you all talked about knowing your own history, knowing your own culture, knowing your audience. Right? How do you capture those moments, right? So hearing those things, it sounds exhausting to have to constantly do those things all the time in different spaces. So I have a couple more questions, but I also want to remind folks that are here listening in, if you have any questions for our panelists, please make sure to use the Q&A in the bottom and ask your questions if you have anything to follow up or you have a new question to ask. So while folks are doing that, I wanted to ask our panelists, how do you all exercise self-care? How do you take care of yourself as you navigate through spaces where you are the trailblazer, right? You are standing on the shoulders of giants, but you know what? It sounds like you are the giants now that folks are standing on the shoulders of. So how do you exercise self-care and find that intersectionality of being that trailblazer, but also taking care of yourself?
I would say start being comfortable with saying no. When you say no to something, you're saying yes to something more important. So this is something even within our culture that we were, maybe speaking for myself, is Monday. Since we're little, like, how can I help? What can I do? How can I be of service? But it was really difficult to do this no situation, right? So I'm getting comfortable now with pushing back on things that might take time out of things that might be important for me. Friday, close the computer and head over to Disneyland. So I am not available after 5 o'clock. So really just knowing our capacity, but also sharing with those we work with and within our families what we have going on and why we're saying no to this. Because the minute that you say yes, 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 yes to everything, you are diminishing the value of something that is very important, which is family and number one, self-care.
I would say I struggled with saying no as well. and it's something I'm constantly battling within myself and figuring out, I'm always overbooked, and it's part of this idea of having FOMO. I'm going to miss the next best event. I'm going to miss this and that. And I've been very cautious coming out of the pandemic and, having to have opened the stadium, I during the pandemic, and really I got to spend a lot more time with my family and really understanding what I valued. And what I've tried to do is bring my family to the events and spend time with them there and really share in my experiences. So it's not just me sharing this, whether it's a game or whether it's a concert, but my family and friends are there with me. And it's creating this balance of like, okay, well, if I'm gonna have to work, I have people around me that can enjoy themselves. And that brings value to me, even though I'm working. But to see them, feel rewarded for some of the work that I've done, especially recently I brought my parents to a concert, and they've only been twice, and to see their faces, at the concert, and to see them dancing and really enjoy themselves and and empower themselves because they felt empowered because their son was working there, right? So that automatically gave them this, my mom was walking through the aisles talking to everyone like, oh, mi hijo trabaja aquí, mi hijo. The idea that she felt so happy, brought sort of this satisfaction to me. I'm like, okay, this is why I'm doing this kind of work and getting them to, they're older. So, but that's also, for me, it's the constant challenge. I'm like, well, do I say no to this? And then do I let that opportunity go? And I think that's what I'm learning, that yes, I'm at a point in my career where I can say no, and that there's gonna be many other opportunities, right? Where before you would say no and you'd think, I'm not, that's gonna backtrack me. That's no longer the case. But I think for some of the younger people that are in school now, is do take advantage of some of those opportunities, because you just never know what that opportunity might be. Again, if I don't go to that event and meet, Nancy, who I met at that, I don't know what my career would have looked like, right? And I still probably could have gone into sports, but that's just the thing. And I think when you're in college, it's really about learning new ways to, and learning about yourself. And what Fidel said is understanding that your classmate, your current, till this day, everyone I was close with in college, they're some of my best friends now. And we're all in, different levels of corporate America. And I think that understanding that value, that to me is what college and the college experience really brought to you. And I don't know if students sometimes, as I've talked to them, realize that sometimes when they're in the classroom, that's who their peers are going to be in 10, 15 years. I tell, a young manager now, is like, don't feel like you need to go talk to the vice president of an organization right now. Go meet the managers or the specialists that are up and coming, because guess what? In 10, 15 years, they're going to be your peers at that level. And if you build those close relationships now, that's who you're going to be able to tap in their shoulder to work together 10, 15 plus years from now.
Well said. There's not much to add there, but it's the constant struggle, to find the ways that are, again, truly important, and some of them time management, but also, again, going back to, making sure that we understand that sometimes it is time to take care of yourself, and of course, what immediately important, after that, there's a sense of, if I'm able to take care of myself now, I could take care of the community and everything else next. So that's sort of kind of the perspective I take now. I certainly also, try to do the best that I can, and very guilty to a degree where there was a feeling that, oh man, like if I don't make that, or I don't go to that event, or if I don't, make that engagement, something is gonna get lost. But just like, Marklem, Adolfo, it will come around, and it'll probably come around in different ways that you haven't or didn't expect. So certainly now that the approach is, it's okay to say no, it's okay to take care of yourself. And if you are okay, and if your immediate, stakeholders are good, then everything else is going to be even better. So certainly that's the, sometimes it's a challenge, a struggle, because it's like a balance act that you want to make sure that you are mindful that, you come first. At the same time, there are other, things that also matter. But at the end of the day, if we don't function, then nothing else functions. So.
Self-care is very important. I think all of us have realized during COVID that what's most important is our family. So spending time with family and friends, connecting with them. Fidel mentioned, time management, to make sure that you're not overdoing it, because you do need time to rest and take care of yourself, because we're nurturers. We want to take care of others, but if we don't take care of ourselves first, we cannot take care of others. So for me, spending time with friends and family, it's really, really important. And the weekends, it's all about that, just downtime and spending time with them. And I've taken up yoga the last couple of years, and it's been very, very helpful to makes me relax, and it just puts you in a different mindset. So it's been wonderful to take on something that I hadn't done before. So if any of you are interested in yoga, you should try it out. It's done wonders for my mental and physical health.
Yeah, thank you. So along those same lines, I think in what Adolfo was saying, there's kind of questions in terms of what advice would you give, right, to our students now who are maybe at the cusp of where you all were maybe 15, 20 years ago in that journey of self-empowerment? Because I think I'm going to rename today's talk about, like, really, we're talking about a journey to self-empowerment here, right? What advice would you give to students now who are navigating this, sitting in their classrooms and thinking about their next steps? What would you want to tell our students that maybe were the yous, right, 15, 20 years ago here at Cal State Fullerton? What do you want them to know about developing and going on this journey of self-empowerment?
I can start. I do some work with young adults, and I always tell them, be open-minded. Be open-minded because you just don't know what's out there. When you meet people, be curious, ask a lot of questions, and networking. It's really, really important, especially when you're young. You're going to meet a lot of people out there, and just be curious. Sometimes they're nervous, because they're not quite comfortable talking to new people. But if you just tell them, I'm a student, I'm working on my networking skills, they are very helpful. They'll help you, they'll connect you with other people, and you'll be able to discover opportunities that are out there that you don't even know about. So there might be some careers that are out there that you're not even aware of. And as Alfonso mentioned, that network that you create is so, so important. I would say 60% of the jobs that are out there are not advertised. Education is extremely important, but sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. So knowing, having that network around you that is going to support you and speak of you when opportunities arise in a room where you're not present are really, really important. So don't be shy. I know it's really scary, but go out there, meet new people, be open-minded, be curious, ask lots of questions, and don't be afraid that when you meet individuals or professionals out there that they may not. Sometimes I heard this from some of my mentees that they feel that they're bothering somebody. If somebody said, "Oh, please reach out to me," they do mean it. So don't be afraid that you're bothering them. So do reach out, ask to connect with that person and grab a cup of coffee. So that would be my advice.
I can share also when it comes to the networking, it's so important. One of the advice that I give to like my interns or student leaders is create a LinkedIn page and start following those people who you admire, and then find out who are they following and then follow those people. I think a LinkedIn page is so important for the professional spectrum of all of the jobs. And don't just follow the specific individuals who are within your career that you're studying, but find out what's going on in nonprofit, what's going on in technology, what is going on in science, what is going on. And I can tell you that LinkedIn is definitely a page. It's not a Facebook or an Instagram, but it's a professional network where you can start connecting with those individuals. I usually say start with someone who if you don't know who to put, maybe just start with Melinda Gates or maybe President Virgie, right? Just start following people who you consider them to be role models, and then continue looking for more to add into your connection until you start building your connections outside of school and work, and then adding them into your connections within LinkedIn as well.
I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn myself. I think looking at that is your personal brand. And to me is what I would tell students today is think of what your personal brand is in school, professionally, personally. And once you identify that, then that's who, I mean, if you have an Instagram account, you're going to put that on your Instagram account or Twitter. or on LinkedIn. For me, finding LinkedIn pretty early on was very helpful, especially in the sports industry. And now you're able to connect with the different people in the industry. And I think for me, looking at that, in one of the things that happened during the pandemic, again, is it's so easy to connect over Zoom or Google Hangout, where before you had to ask, do you have time for coffee? Or, getting an appointment with someone was impossible. Where now it's just so easy to say, I have 20 minutes, and I make it a habit where I speak to 2 or 3 people that reach out to me on LinkedIn, and they send me messages. I just want to hear a little bit about kind of how you got there, and don't be afraid to ask those questions, because all of us were there once, and I think we all had the people that helped us through our careers, and I think we're all willing to help until that's and don't be, our story doesn't have to be your story. It's understanding our story so how you can then get there yourself and understand what the path is, because it might be totally different, right? I think that's the beauty of what's happening with technology today. We didn't know what we know today 2 years ago. And I think that's what's crazy about this. And I think don't be afraid to, again, feel uncomfortable, because if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing, in my opinion. And I think that's really important for everyone that's in school today, and for all of us too.
Thank you. Fidel, did you have something to add?
Yes, I say yes to everything, but definitely echoing the same sentiment. Certainly being understand that it's not a sprint, but rather a marathon, and it's not a straight path either. It's literally going to be. It could look like a whole circle, and it could go like zigzag. But definitely, as you can see here with our various different backgrounds and different experiences, we have gone left, right, maybe multiple times backwards before we went forward. But certainly really, really understanding that you do have, and currently, if you're in school right now, you have access of some of the resources already. Build your network, use your network, leverage your network. And I think my colleagues here speak to, of course, LinkedIn, and of course the different opportunities of what networks provide to you. And certainly those are very, very relevant. They're very important, and not only I personally have benefited from using them and leveraging strategically both network and LinkedIn, but also it's the same thing I also preach to my mentees, and I say that is as soon as you start understanding how that works, the faster and easier and better it will become for you. Because, well, before, yes, Rolodex, and you literally have to go to event to meet someone. Now it's like you meet them through virtual Zoom or whatever engagement, and everything is a little bit more accessible. And sometimes it's okay to ask, and hey, can you connect me? I see that you're connected to someone that I want to connect or learn from. And one of the also key things that I want to add is don't take things personal. And what I mean by that is I do have mentees that do come to me and say, hey, I've been reaching out and they just don't, write to me back, or they're taking I don't know if they want to talk to me. So sometimes I say, it's okay to understand that not everyone, is going to be, readily available or accessible at times, but there will be a time. And if that connection or person ultimately doesn't end up happening, something else better will come out. So don't get disappointed, don't give up, and don't take it personal, and don't think that it's you, because it's part of the process. But many of us here, I'm sure, we have reached out to folks that we wanted to connect with, and certainly it was probably not a success, but we have benefited from that experience along, and now here we are. But definitely and ultimately, don't give up.
Thank you. So we have 3 questions that came in from the participants. We have about 14 minutes left. So I'm just gonna put those time markers on us. So the first one, we had a participant that shared that they really appreciate the thoughts and comments today. And as leaders of our community, your stories are helping so many of our students become future leaders and see their opportunities. So their question is, do you have any additional thoughts about what helped you respond to failures throughout your career?
I think the idea of just learning from those failures and knowing that, understanding with whatever the situation that you were put in, if you did fail, what you gained from that. And I think sometimes your biggest knowledge comes from failing. And I think that's really important in overcoming those barriers. Because I think I'll give you an example. So right after I mentioned I worked for Chivas, and I went to go work for Herbalife. And when I was at Herbalife, they really wanted me to be, again, my career was like, trajectory was like, I want to be in sports, and they put me in sales, and I got there, and I realized I wasn't your traditional salesperson. So then I failed, but that in that process, I understood why I had failed and why the approach I had taken was not good. So then I was able to figure out a way so that to switch that mentality and really be like, I was like, well, I'm not a seller, but I'm a relationship builder, and understanding that it was more about building that relationship. And I think Fidel said it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I understood at that point that it's going to take a while, but you got to build those relationships. And I think for people and students today, and I see it because my staff is recent college graduates, the idea of networking and talking to people, it seems a little bit more fearful because I don't know if it's the pandemic, it's part of it. It's, people are just feeling like, well, we were just told to not talk to people, get too close to people. And now you're asking us to go out and network and, dealing with that. I think there's a lot of confusion happening. But I think it's, for me, going back to that experience, that then helped me to then understand some of those things that I'm dealing with some of my staff today, right? Where I am encouraging them, go out and meet new people, but also like, well, you also told us not to come into the office because we're dealing with COVID. So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting times right now.
One thing that I can add that was very beneficial to me, and this is an opportunity for professors from Cal State Fullerton to incorporate, is that bringing in guest speakers from the specific career. That's, like I mentioned, I was in my 101, public relations 101, had no clue what I was going to do with this career. And our professor brought in different speakers from different sectors of public relations. It was from the agency, from the government. And when the first speakers were coming in, I was just so disappointed because I'm like, that is not what I want to do. And I think I chose the wrong career, until that last guest speaker came in from a nonprofit and shared how the value that her work brings to her, because it matches her values. Sometimes you're working for a company and you just don't feel comfortable because maybe it just doesn't fit your values. But when you bring in those guest speakers from this specific career that you're studying, you have an opportunity to ask questions. Right after that presenter for nonprofit did her speech, I ran over to her and I said, I want an internship, because it connected with my values. It spoke directly to me, and it had nothing to do with public relations. I ended up being in a nonprofit doing some of the communications, but now working in community public health. So always try to find opportunities where your leaders can bring in speakers where you can learn from them as well. And maybe that could be something that could be of value for you too.
Thank you. So in the interest, I'm going to move on to the next question so we can try to get through them all. So another participant asked, what are important questions to ask when you are starting to create connections and networks?
I could start that one. Well, the first thing is, if I may say, is one of the key items that I've always found it useful, and I've seen this play multiple times over and over, is the fact that sometimes you don't want to go out there and start asking questions about the actual, hey, how did you get this job? But rather, hey, how was your pathway towards this career? Where did you go to school? Where did you grow up? Things like that sometimes are a lot more powerful than sounding, I'd say, transactional. Sometimes when you get straight to the, hey, how can I get that job that you have right now? That sometimes throws off a lot of people. But certainly sometimes making those questions a little bit more personal. Hey, when you were a student like me, what was your take on this career path? What was your experience? Did you engage a lot with the community? How did you build your resume? But I also want to add, because we're talking about asking the right questions, I also want to include the listening and really listening to understand, right, what the person you're trying to learn from. Understanding what they're saying too, it plays a big role. And sometimes you listening more than you ask plays a very important factor. And I tend to be on the timid side. So when I go in, of course, certainly the first thing is connecting with people on the personal basis first, acknowledging, hey, that's an amazing tie you have, where did you get it? And then take it from there. Essentially start to listen and understand their experiences, their challenges, and really go back around and say, hey, I love to see if you have an additional 5-10 minutes, or maybe sometime for coffee, so that I could, just share. Maybe, I love to get your take on how I could, enter the space or whatnot. So, but those are kind of my experience.
One of the things I love to ask, I ask my mentees to ask whomever they're networking with, is ask the other person, what advice would you give your younger self? And it makes people ponder, they go back however many years, and because that way, the ultimate goal is to give the opportunity to the younger generation so that they get to where we are a little faster. Maybe even provide to them with a shortcut if it's possible. I think it's our responsibility to provide them with those little nuggets so that they can get to where we are a little faster. So I like to ask that question.